Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going straight into a fascinating exploration using a source that one of you shared with us.
And this time, that source is a window into historical medicine, a homeopathic materia medica entry.
Exactly. We're looking at Aceticum acidum, or glacial acetic acid, as described in this text. Now, if you're not familiar, a homeopathic materia medica is, well, it's like a detailed catalog. It gathers observations from what they call provings.
Right, where they recorded the effects of substances on healthy people.
Yes, exactly. Along with notes on how they were used clinically for treating illnesses.
And this specific one we're diving into is from William Boericke, a really influential figure in homeopathy. His work is still a key reference.
So our goal here isn't really to debate homeopathy itself, but more to, unpack the observations packed into this historical text.
Yeah, it gives us a unique perspective on how a substance was understood and used back then.
Right, it's a snapshot of a specific medical tradition. Okay, let's get into it. What's the sort of overall picture of Aceticum acidum in Boericke's writing?
Well, the overwhelming feeling is one of profound depletion, real weakness.
Depletion, okay.
Yeah, you see repeated mentions of anemia, lack of red blood cells, and what they term dropsical
Which
symptoms.
is basically swelling, edema.
Exactly. Edema, fluid imbalances. There's this strong sense of just general weakness, debility, often fainting, shortness of breath.
Suggesting it hits the body pretty hard, maybe the heart.
Quite possibly, yeah. A real impact on vitality.
And there's that description. Pale, lean persons with lax, flabby muscles. That's quite a vivid image.
It is. It really emphasizes a loss of tone, deep exhaustion. What's particularly interesting, though, is the claim about it liquefying certain deposits.
Liquefying deposits? What kind?
Albuminous and fibrinous ones. These are types of proteins that can, build up in the body.
Like in inflammation or scarring, that sort of thing.
Precisely. Think scar tissue or maybe the gunk in some chronic inflammatory states. So the idea it could break that down, well, that's significant within their framework.
Right. Did they link this to specific conditions?
They did. The text mentions epithelial cancer, internally and locally, attributed to a Dr. W. Owens.
Okay.
Also psychosis with nodules in joints, and even hard chancre.
Now, we need to remember that medical terms back then, well, they don't always map directly to today's understanding, right?
Absolutely. Psychosis, for instance, had a much broader meaning, and diagnostic categories were different.
Makes sense.
And there's this note about the 1X solution. That's a specific homeopathic dilution, potentially softening tissues, even causing pus.
Locally,
Yeah.
like applied to the skin.
It makes you wonder, just possible topical uses, perhaps.
Okay, moving to the mental side. It mentions irritability and worry. Specifically about business affairs. Seems quite specific.
It does. But in homeopathy, these mental and emotional states are key parts of the remedy picture.
Ah, right. The idea being that if the substance causes it in a healthy person.
It might treat similar symptoms in someone who's unwell. So the business worries become part of the signal, potentially pointing towards Aceticum acidum. There's also talk of a nervous headache linked to narcotic abuse.
Oh, interesting.
And a feeling of blood rushing to the head with delirium, and you can actually see the temporal vessels bulging.
Wow. Okay, so possibly effects on the nervous system too.
Seems likely, yes. And then there's that really specific symptom.
The pain across the root of the tongue. Yeah, that's very precise.
Exactly. And in homeopathy, these very specific, sometimes unusual symptoms are often considered keynotes, like the body sending a very particular signal.
Let's talk about the face. The description is pretty stark. Pale, waxen, emaciated, sunken eyes, dark rings.
Yeah, it really fits with that overall picture of depletion, the anemia, the wasting we talked about earlier.
It does, but then
But then, there's this contrasting image. A bright red, sweaty face and hot, flushed cheeks.
so completely opposite. How does that work?
It suggests the remedy might fit different presentations, maybe different stages of an illness or different individual reactions. It highlights that complexity.
So it's not just one simple picture.
Yeah.
And again, very specific locations noted. Achy in the left jaw point and epithelioma of the lip.
These localized symptoms are typical of the detailed observations in these old texts. They were mapping the body's responses meticulously.
Now, the stomach and gut issues, they seem really central here. It starts with salivation and fermentation. What did they likely mean by fermentation?
Probably indigestion, like gas, bloating, things just not sitting right. Like food is literally fermenting in the stomach.
Okay, makes sense.
Then there's intense burning first, but distress from cold drinks. Classic digestive complaint signs.
Right. And vomiting after all food. That sounds severe.
It really underlines the level of distress. An epigastric tenderness, a burning pain as of an ulcer. They even mention stomach cancer.
So serious upper GI problems observed.
Definitely. There's this description of violent burning in the stomach and chest, then cold skin, cold sweat. It sounds like an acute crisis.
Yeah.
And what's really striking is the sensation of the stomach feeling as if she had taken a lot of vinegar.
Given that we're talking about acetic acid, that's pretty direct.
It really is a direct link between the substance and the reported feeling.
And lower down, the abdomen.
There's a sinking feeling, watery stools often in the morning, bloating tympanites, and even fluid buildup, ascites.
And hemorrhage from the bowels, too.
Yes. So it seems the observed effects really span the whole digestive tract. Widespread distress.
Okay. Let's shift to the urinary and female symptoms. Large amounts of pale urine.
And an association with diabetes, specifically noting the great thirst and debility. They compare it to Fossac.
Phosphoric acid. Why draw that comparison?
Well, phosphoric acid is another remedy linked to diabetes-like symptoms. The
Yeah.
excessive urination, the profound weakness. So comparing them helps practitioners differentiate.
To find the best fit based on the finer detail.
Exactly. Fine-tuning the remedy selection.
And the female symptoms.
Quite detailed, too. Excessive menstruation, hemorrhages after giving birth, nausea during pregnancy.
And it seems to affect breastfeeding.
Yes, painfully enlarged breasts, but the milk itself is described as impoverished, bluish, transparent, sour,
Wow. Impoverished milk.
and anemia in nursing mothers. So it suggests, systemic effects reaching into reproductive health and lactation.
Raises questions about how they thought that worked mechanism-wise.
Definitely, within their framework, of course.
What about respiratory issues? Sounds like those were prominent too. Hoarse, hissing breathing.
Difficult breathing, yeah. A cough triggered just by inhaling has a serious airway irritation.
And membranous croup. That sounds serious.
It is. It suggests a severe infection where a membrane forms in the airway. They also note profuse bronchorrhea, excessive mucus, and putrid sore throat.
And they even suggest a gargle.
Yeah, maybe hinting at local antiseptic use as they understood it.
And then there's that very, very specific back pain symptom.
Yes. Pain relieved only by lying on abdomen.
That's so peculiar. Why highlight something that specific?
Well, again, in homeopathy, these highly specific, unusual symptoms are gold. They're called strange, rare, and peculiar symptoms.
Okay.
The thinking is, if a substance causes such a unique symptom in a healthy person, it might be the perfect match for a sick person who happens to have that same weird symptom. It's about finding that precise resonance.
Fascinating. Okay, extremities, skin, fever. Emaciation and edema, again in the feet and legs.
Reinforcing that theme of wasting and fluid issues, yeah.
And the skin descriptions are quite varied. Pale, waxy, swollen, but also burning dry, hot, or profuse sweat.
It's a real mix. Suggests different potential manifestations, also diminished surface sensibility, like numbness.
Another neurological hint.
Could be. And its usefulness after stings and bites suggests maybe an anti-inflammatory action locally.
And varicose veins, scurvy, anasarca, that's generalized swelling, right?
Right, plus bruises, sprains, a broad range of effects on skin and tissues. You wonder what the perceived connection was.
And the fever, hectic, with drenching night sweats.
A classic picture, often linked to wasting diseases like TB back then.
And that red spot on left cheek, another signature symptom.
Seems like it. And really unusually, an absence of thirst during the fever.
That is odd. Usually fever makes you thirsty.
Right, and profuse cold sweat. It seems quite counterintuitive.
So these fever details really help paint that unique remedy profile.
Absolutely. The lack of thirst during fever would be a major pointer differentiating it from other fever remedies.
Okay, finally, the relationships and dosage. It's supposedly an antidote to anesthetic vapors and sausage poisoning.
Yeah, antidotal in this context means it was thought to relieve the bad effects of those things. If you reacted badly to anesthesia or got sick from sausage, they thought acetic acid could help.
Interesting. And the comparisons to other remedies, aminacid, benzoin, odoriferum.
Those help refine the picture, like aminacid for sugary urine and sweat, benzoin for night sweats, similar symptoms, but maybe aceticum acidum fits the whole picture better in certain cases.
And it's compared to arsenicum, china, digitalis for major swelling.
Yeah, liatris too. Placing it within a group for serious fluid retention, dropsy, chronic diarrhea, often linked to heart or kidney issues in their view.
And the dose. Third to 30th potency, but don't repeat too often.
Right. Potency refers to the homeopathic dilution and shaking process. Third is less dilute. 30th is much more dilute.
And the don't repeat idea.
That's a general principle in classical homeopathy. Give the remedy time to act before redosing. Except apparently in croup, where they might repeat it more.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Boericke's Aceticum acidum, what we really see is this incredibly detailed picture.
Yeah, a state marked by profound weakness, major fluid balance problems.
And this collection of really specific, sometimes odd symptoms affecting everything from mood to digestion to skin.
It's like a time capsule, showing how practitioners meticulously observed and categorized the body's reactions.
Absolutely. And some of those symptoms really stick with you, don't they?
Oh, definitely. That back pain relief only lying on the stomach, the opposite facial appearances, the stomach feeling like vinegar.
The lack of thirst with fever. They're so striking.
They really offer unique glimpse into the observational intensity of that era.
It really makes you think, how can understanding these older ways of looking at medicine, even if they're very different from today's methods, how can that broaden our perspective on health, illness, and just the sheer complexity of how our bodies respond to things?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
What might these detailed historical observations, even in their own context, hint at about the symptom patterns we still encounter?
Yeah, is there enduring value in just that careful observation, even if the explanations change?
I think so. The careful recording of specific patterns across different eras, maybe it still holds clues or suggests connections worth exploring today, even with modern tools.
It definitely encourages an appreciation for that long history of trying to figure out the body and alleviate suffering.
Well said. It's a reminder of the ongoing evolution of medical understanding.
So we encourage you, the listener, to think about what stood out most to you from this particular deep dive. Maybe even explore some of these historical texts yourself.
There's a whole world of observation there.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going straight into a fascinating exploration using a source that one of you shared with us.